What you saw on TV was not how it really went down. What's up guys, Matty B here and welcome to No Going Back. In this video, I'm going to share with you the secrets from behind the scenes of Married at First Sight and what really happened at my infamous dinner party scene. Now, some of you are probably wondering, why talk about this now? Why bring it up? Well, it's been almost 2.5 years for me since my episodes were filmed, and that's a long time. And for me, I kind of feel like enough time has passed now that I should be able to talk about this stuff. I'm no longer in a confidentiality clause with producers. I can talk freely, and I feel like I'm no longer the same person that went in. I've changed, I've grown, I've learnt from my mistakes and my experiences, and I feel like that gives me the freedom to talk about this stuff. But not only that, I find that what went on, the reality versus what was shown, is really quite fascinating in how they structured the stories and how they told the narrative. And I believe that the only mistake is not learning a lesson where there is a lesson to be learnt. And I certainly learnt a lot of lessons from my time on Married at First Sight. But before we go any further, I really want to encourage you to go ahead and hit the subscribe button and turn on bell notifications so you can be notified every time we release a new video. Now, some of my castmates have already broken down their edit and how they were portrayed on the show, but I really wanted to break down my side of the story, what happened for me. Right off the bat, I didn't know what my storyline was going to be going into the show. That was something that got crafted in the edit later on. But I was told from the get-go that I was going to be a gimmick. Not in those words, but they said, we're going to focus on the fact that you're a virgin and we're going to push it. And it's like, okay, I'm a gimmick. I'd always watched professional wrestling growing up and every wrestler had a gimmick. So it's like, I can accept that. That's fine. But I wasn't prepared for just how hard they pushed it. Even the advertising and the captions, they would just constantly plaster the fact that Matthew Bennett, 29-year-old virgin, and they would really ham it up to the point where it just got quite obnoxious. And they tied literally everything they could back to this virginity thing, even so much as I was hospitalized on the honeymoon. Now, they made it seem like some big underdog, romantic, amazing thing. I was nervous and was having an anxiety attack because the honeymoon was so overwhelming. It sounded like a triumphant underdog story. Oh, cue the violins, cue the heartstrings, cue the warm fuzzy feelings. Unfortunately, guys, the reality was not that romantic. Unfortunately, what you don't see behind the scenes is these weddings are very long affairs. They take entire days, and in that time you have to stand there and be ready for different angles and different camera takes, and you're not allowed to go to the bathroom very often. So unfortunately, for someone like myself, who's prone to anxiety, who has a nervous bladder, I needed to go to the toilet a lot during the wedding day. But I wasn't allowed to. I think I was allowed to go twice during the whole day. I was hospitalized because of a UTI. I had a bladder infection on the honeymoon because I wasn't allowed to go to the toilet on the wedding day. Before the couples are matched up, everyone goes through extensive psychological testing. I went through about 3 rounds and multiple different weird tests, like smelling shirts for pheromones apparently, which I thought was really scientific. So for someone as naive as myself going in there, thought these psychological tests were to find my perfect match, and that's what I believed. What I now realize is they do such extensive psychological profiling so they know what your triggers are, what's going to set you off, and then they find someone to inflame that. The formula of the show is really quite brilliant. They take someone and find their polar opposite. Then they throw them together in a blender and see what happens. They hit record on the cameras and they sit back. And I'll use an example in my case. I'm a non-drinker. I've never drunk. I don't intend to drink. I don't want to drink. And they matched me with someone who was quite a heavy drinker. And they sent us both to a vineyard for the honeymoon. And people get upset because they think none of the couples work. But no one ever said they were supposed to. The show is called a social experiment. They wanted my storyline to be this big, romantic, perfect match, oh, everything's wonderful thing, and then it was a shock departure. They wanted to build up and have a massive shock, and they achieved just that. And to do that, they had to omit a lot of the doubts I was having, a lot of the conflict between the person I was matched with and myself. Because if they'd shown that, it wouldn't have fed the narrative that they were building. Now, there are elements of the show where I come off quite a weirdo. I sit there, I'm not saying anything, and I'm just blinking. And people have jumped on that and they've said, "Why are you so blinky? What's wrong with you?" And I was called all sorts of things, but what no one saw was the things that were said before that I just couldn't deal with. No one ever saw what was like behind the cameras and when the cameras weren't rolling. And for me recently, I was diagnosed with avoidant personality disorder. Now, avoidant personality disorder is extreme anxiety induced by stress. Basically, you get so overwhelmed by a situation or an emotion that you don't know how to function. You just shut down because growing up, that was the best coping mechanism you had. So when something overwhelming or stressful or anxiety-inducing happens, you shut down and you can't talk and everything becomes too much. And for me, what then would happen is my eyes would get very heavy, I'd get very tired, they'd get very dry, and I would just blink, and I couldn't cope anymore. Fortunately for myself, this avoidant personality disorder is something that I've been working on with a therapist and is getting a lot better. I now no longer shut down when there's conflict or in stressful situations. But given the scope of the conversations I was having with this person on the show and what was happening behind the scenes, it was too much for me to cope with, and I just couldn't deal with it. Now, the final dinner party for myself, where I said I was not physically attracted to this person and she heard it out of earshot and I didn't say it to her directly, came across really, really poorly. The reality of what actually happened, she was present for the conversation and she was goading me and asking another person in front of me, "What's wrong with him?" And then he asked me, "Matt, are you physically attracted to this person?" And I looked at her and I said, "I don't think that I am." At which point she was upset, understandably. So she got up, walked to the other end of the table and sat down with the rest of the women and started to talk about what had happened. Then from my end of the table with the rest of the gentlemen, they were asking, "What just happened, Matt?" And then I repeated what had just happened. The producers brilliantly used that bit of me just talking to the men and spliced it in with her reaction to make it seem like I had cruelly said that to them before letting her know. Granted, I think I could have handled the whole situation a lot better, but how it came across was not quite how it was. On the show, my exit looked as though I just packed up all my things and left. But that's not exactly what happened. You see, the producers moved me to a secret room on another floor in the hotel where we were all staying. Why? Well, about a week earlier at my first dinner party, when we were on a break, the person I was with started punching me in the shoulder as hard as she could, over and over and over again. Now, of course, this was once again one of the times when the cameras weren't around and nothing was rolling. It was the classic Jekyll and Hyde situation. I don't know why she was hitting me. I'm not sure if she was just frustrated or I had triggered her or whatever it was, but I was uncomfortable. And there was a production runner, an assistant there, who saw the whole thing. And she was hitting me and I felt uncomfortable. And I said to this production runner, "Are you going to do something about this?" And she said to me, "You're a big guy, you can take it." Now, unfortunately, me being someone who's not prone to violence or confrontation and doesn't see violence as a solution, all I could do was just stand there and take it. During my second week on the show, this person I was matched with was becoming increasingly unpleasant verbally towards me, to the point where it got so bad where I had to go to the producers and make a formal complaint. When I told them everything she'd been saying and doing and how she'd hit me at the first dinner party, they were quite alarmed, and so was I. After that second dinner party where we broke up, the producers told me they were moving me because she was incredibly unpredictable and they weren't sure how she was going to react. And to be honest, this was probably the safest choice, and that explains my shock exit from the show. After I left the show, things didn't end. I started getting a lot of text messages, which for someone like me, who doesn't deal with confrontation, was very hard to deal with. But I knew there was a reunion coming up where I'd have to see her again, so I didn't want to block her from communication. A lot of people don't realize there's quite a few months between when the show is filmed and when it airs. We had to go back for the final dinner party, and then they make us all do media appearances together. The person I was matched with was blocked from doing any media appearances, which was weird for me to then take it on my own. Everyone else, regardless of whether they're still a couple or not, or how it ended on the show, does the media appearances together, but not me. We're all told we have to keep the storyline going, which sucked for me because I was still getting these harassing text messages and then had to go on radio and TV and act like things were okay and things weren't bothering me and that it was a really happy relationship, which it wasn't. I was led to believe that by following this narrative, I would come out looking as good as possible, given how the show was going to be cut together. I was doing media interviews all the while pretending that this relationship was following the trajectory that the producers had set out. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I'm begging them to intervene because they have access and control all our social media. Eventually, the storyline ended and I could freely block her. And then she started slating me online. But honestly, it was so much better because I was now no longer afraid to check my phone. Really, all things considered, I got off lightly. But let this be a warning to all of you that reality TV is not actually reality. It's a highly edited and often contrived storyline that we as participants have no impact and no effect on changing or altering in any way. All of us are just reacting to pressure orchestrated by the show. And in my case, myself and the person I was matched with, we were just two people who were designed to bring out the worst in one another, then thrown into a situation that would inflame the tensions and make things worse. So the reality of what actually happened and the storyline you got is really quite different, and it's really interesting and very clever the way they've done it. And if you're thinking of going on a show like this, I'm not going to discourage you because, look, who am I to judge? But just go in knowing that what you think might happen probably won't. But you know what, guys? Everything in life is a lesson and you either win or you learn. And I definitely learnt with going on Married at First Sight. But if you have any questions or things you want to know about the show or what went on behind the scenes, let me know in the comments below and I'll be happy to answer it. If you liked this video, go ahead and hit the like button and make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on bell notifications so you can be notified every time we release a new video. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and until next time, I'm Matty B, and be kind to one another.